So if you're using a router table, you want to set the bit height to be your depth of cut here. And my depth of cut is going to be just enough to cut to the panel. You're not cutting all the way to here, you're just cutting to the panel. You're just taking this bottom edge of that slot out, the bottom edge, so that the panel can fall out. Now these lines here are your stop and start point. They coincide to the width of the rails and stiles. Okay? It's also the same distance from the fence to the router bit, right? Because this is what we want to save. We want to save this part. We could go in further, but we might as well get, you know, as close as we can. And since this is where all the structure is in a door frame construction, then we can get as close to that as we want and still maintain the structural integrity of the door. So what you end up having when you go to start it, let me move the camera over a little bit. When you line up with that start point and drop the bit down, that's where it's starting. You can see where it's touching there. So you're going to drop it down, and that's a controlled cut. You have to have pretty good control of the door. You have a good, you know, 2 hands on it. But that's something that you do with a router on top. You can also do it with a router on the bottom. You just drop it down in and it does a plunge cut. And you'll notice my bit is not a plunge bit, but you can still do it. It'll just burn a little bit. So you drop it down and you move the door more slowly than this, obviously, until you get to your other stop point. And that's the width of the bottom frame. And then you can either stop your router and hold it there until the bit comes to a stop, or you can lift it. And that's another technique that if you're have any experience with a router, you can do that with confidence. Now what I ended up doing, I ended up starting about here and going to about here. And the reason why is that you can see, if you can see this paint line right here, see that paint line? Well, this panel is floating in this frame that high. It's floating about an 1/8 inch higher than the table. So if I were to cut all the way around the door, when I got to that point, the panel would drop, or even worse, when I got almost to the end over here, it would start to drop. And that could mean it might bind with the bit, and you could get a lot of chatter, or even worse, if that thing fell down, it could start running around on you and maybe even force you to lose control and push this out away from the fence, and then you've ruined your frame with that bit. So I stopped about there on 4 sides. You could do it on, you know, you could do 1 there, 2 there, and then you'd have 2, 4, 6, 8, or you could just do, you know, 4 of them, 1 on each length, just enough to hold that panel up to keep it from dropping down into the bit. And then it's really easy to clean up with to take that out with a chisel, and then the panel comes out. And I'll show you later with a pattern bit how to clean up the inside here. It's going to make it look real nice using a pattern bit. See, now you have those pieces at the corners holding the panel in so it doesn't drop onto the table. And earlier I showed you that paint line being where the panel floats. That's not actually where the panel floats. You can see the panel would be falling much higher. Be falling all that way, which is even more potential for some danger. So when you're done on a router, what you end up with is this, and you can see the space between the panel and the frame, and there's a little nub I left there to keep it in the frame, and there, over here, there I went back and cut it a little close. But like here you can see all that room where the panel is, and they do that so the panel can expand and contract with seasonal change. So when you're done on the router cleaning that edge up, and I just used a bearing bit, and I actually went along this edge here. I didn't have enough depth to use a pattern bit. I went along this edge. Ended up being 3/16, and you see there's a little bit of a lip there, but that's okay because the glass, as far as I know, you want your glass to be a little undersized anyway on that, because the wood will expand and contract. You don't want it pinching the glass. Glass actually expands and contracts as well. And then the corners, I'll just clean those up with a corner chisel or a file, or not a file, a regular chisel. Same there. And when you clean it up, you end up with that, or hopefully a better looking job. But the glass will be a little bit undersized there, and you'll probably want to paint the insides of those, because you'll be able to see those through the glass. You'll be able to see, especially this part here. So I'll probably put some white primer on there.